one signature, one silent order. And in a move no one saw coming, William quietly transferred the Queen's most sacred private art collection directly into Catherine's care, leaving Camilla completely excluded. No consultation, no warning, no royal courtesy. Inside palace corridors, whispers turned into shockwaves. Was this preservation or punishment? Because this wasn't just about paintings, it was about power, legacy, and a message sent in silence. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The decision did not arrive with ceremony or announcement. There were no gilded speeches, no carefully staged photographs, no reassuring statements drafted for public comfort. It moved quietly, internally, passed through trusted hands, and sealed behind guarded doors. That silence was deliberate. Within the monarchy, silence is often the loudest declaration of all. By choosing discretion over display, William ensured the transfer felt less like a celebration and more like a recalibration. Those who understood palace dynamics immediately recognized the weight of it. This was not a routine adjustment. It was a defining line drawn with precision. The Queen's private art collection was never part of the public royal collection. It was not state property. It did not belong to institutions or committees. It belonged to her. Every acquisition carried intention. Every piece reflected a moment, a relationship, a private judgment formed over decades of duty and discipline. These works were not trophies of power. They were fragments of personal memory. They symbolized sovereign identity shaped not by policy, but by emotion. To redirect that archive was to redirect a living legacy. William understood that, and perhaps that is why the move felt so decisive. His authority to authorize the transfer signaled more than administrative control. It revealed confidence and assertion that the future king does not wait for consensus when legacy is at stake. In one motion, he demonstrated that the emotional core of the monarchy will be curated under his vision. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Catherine was not merely entrusted with stewardship, she was elevated into guardianship of memory itself. For Catherine, this was not presented as reward, but responsibility. Yet responsibility within royal circles is the most powerful form of recognition. The custodianship aligns her unmistakably with the Queen's legacy. It suggests trust that transcends protocol. It frames her as continuity embodied. Where others might see artwork, insiders see endorsement. Inheriting the Queen's private archive quietly positions Catherine as the emotional bridge between reigns, the stabilizing presence meant to carry forward not just tradition, but tone. And then there is Camilla. Her absence from the decision is impossible to interpret as oversight. No advisory role, no shared guardianship, no symbolic inclusion to soften perception. Within a family defined by hierarchy and subtle gestures, exclusion speaks volumes. Those close to the palace describe the early reaction not as explosive, but controlled. Confusion, tension, strategic restraint. Public composure maintained. Yet beneath that composure, something shifted. Because when legacy is reassigned without consultation, it creates questions that cannot be answered by protocol alone. The timing adds another layer of intrigue. Why now? Why with such quiet urgency? Some whisper that this was about preservation, ensuring the Queen's personal archive remains aligned with the monarchy's next chapter. Others believe it was preventative, a consolidation of influence before competing interpretations could take root. Whatever the motive, the effect is undeniable. A silent but unmistakable realignment has begun. And if this transfer feels like a contained decision, history suggests otherwise. In royal politics, one decisive move rarely stands alone. It seeks a direction, it sets tone, it tests boundaries. This may be remembered as the moment the emotional architecture of the monarchy shifted hands, not through confrontation, but through quiet authority. But to understand why this decision cuts so deeply, we have to look beyond the artwork and into what the collection truly represents. This was never just a collection of canvases. The Queen's private art archive held personal acquisitions, hidden commissions, and pieces tied to moments of grief, triumph, and private diplomacy. Unlike the public royal collection, These works belonged to her heart. So when William redirected them to Catherine, he wasn't transferring decor, he was transferring memory. And memory in a monarchy built on legacy is power. To understand the weight of that transfer, you have to separate what the world sees from what the Queen kept for herself. The public royal collection stands as a monument to the crown, catalogued, curated, protected by committees and tradition. It represents continuity of the institution, but her private holdings were different. They were chosen in quiet moments, acquired without press releases, sometimes commissioned without anyone knowing the true reason. They were reflections of her personal compass. In a life governed by duty, this collection was one of the few spaces shaped by feeling rather than expectation. Each piece carried a story that never appeared in official records. Some were linked to defining royal eras, moments of national tension, private sorrow, or diplomatic triumph. Others were believed to commemorate deeply personal milestones that the public never fully understood. Over decades, this archive became a silent diary written in brushstrokes and color. It captured the emotional undercurrent of a reign that often appeared composed on the surface but carried immense internal weight. To inherit such a collection is to inherit insight into the Queen's private world, and that is precisely why the decision feels seismic. By entrusting this archive to Catherine, William did more than assign responsibility. He reframed her position within the monarchy. She is no longer simply the future queen consort waiting patiently in the wings. She becomes the guardian of narrative, the steward of sentiment, the one entrusted with interpreting and preserving how the Queen is remembered beyond official speeches and public ceremonies. This is not symbolic decoration, it is a declaration of alignment. Catherine now stands as the living extension of a deeply personal legacy, yet legacy is rarely transferred without consequence. Camilla's long journey toward acceptance within the royal structure was built on navigating symbolism carefully. Every title, every gesture of acknowledgement, every gradual step toward legitimacy carried emotional complexity. To be excluded from something so intimate a collection that represents not institutional authority, but personal trust, creates a contrast that cannot be ignored. The psychological impact is subtle but profound. It signals proximity to the Queen's inner world, and proximity in royal dynamics defines influence. The more observers examine the decision, the clearer one possibility becomes. This is not simply about preservation, it is about narrative control. Who shapes how the Queen's memory is interpreted? Who curates the emotional framework through which history will remember her reign? By transferring the private archive to Catherine, William effectively places that responsibility within his immediate circle. He ensures that the emotional story of the Queen aligns with the future he envisions for the crown, and in doing so, he introduces a quiet tension that lingers beneath the surface. Because when memory is curated selectively, it shapes not only the past, but the path forward. The monarchy survives on continuity, but continuity depends on who holds the pen, and in this case, the canvas. And if memory is power, then the question becomes unavoidable. Why was Camilla intentionally kept outside that circle? Camilla has weathered storms before, but this felt different. No shared oversight, no advisory role, not even ceremonial inclusion. For a woman who fought decades for acceptance within the monarchy, being excluded from the Queen's most personal archive is more than symbolic, it is surgical. Was this a subtle correction of hierarchy, or something far more personal, something rooted in unfinished tensions from the past? Her path into royal legitimacy was never smooth. It was negotiated slowly, carefully, through years of restraint and calculated patience. Public skepticism, whispered comparisons, the weight of history, she endured all of it. Over time, she aligned herself with institutional stability. She supported continuity, she reinforced structure. Her presence gradually shifted from controversy to quiet reliability. That transformation did not happen by accident. It was built on compromise, discipline, and an understanding of how fragile royal unity can be, which is why this exclusion lands with such force. After everything she navigated, being omitted from the stewardship of the Queen's private collection feels deliberate. It interrupts the image of cohesion carefully maintained at the highest levels of the family. In public, statements remain courteous. Appearances remain composed. Yet exclusion from something so intimate fractures perception in subtle but undeniable ways. When senior figures are united, symbolism is shared. When one is left outside the circle, the message reverberates. Inside palace corridors, interpretations vary, but one theme echoes consistently: boundary. This decision feels like a line drawn with precision. Not hostile, not loud, just unmistakable. A quiet clarification of roles as the monarchy prepares for its next era. Those who analyze royal strategy understand that legacy assets are never assigned casually. They are positioned, guarded, directed. And in this case, the direction seems to favor a future centered unmistakably around William and Catherine. The emotional undertones cannot be dismissed. Public perception matters deeply to the institution. Camilla's journey toward acceptance required resilience in the face of scrutiny. Being sidelined in such a personal matter risks reopening old narratives, stirring dormant comparisons, reigniting questions about belonging and hierarchy. Even if no confrontation occurs, even if no statement acknowledges tension, the psychological weight exists. It lingers. It reshapes internal dynamics in ways that are rarely visible but profoundly felt. There is also the matter of loyalty. The Queen's private archive represents trust. To inherit it is to be viewed as aligned with her inner judgment. To be excluded is to stand at a distance from that trust. Whether intentional or strategic, the optics reinforce a powerful message. The emotional and symbolic heart of the monarchy now orbits William and Catherine. Camilla's role, though respected, appears repositioned adjacent, not central. And that repositioning carries long-term implications. The monarchy thrives on continuity, but continuity evolves. As generational leadership transitions solidify, influence recalibrates, decisions once shared become streamlined, authority narrows. The future is shaped not only by titles, but by who controls legacy. If this transfer represents the first visible shift, it may also foreshadow deeper internal distancing. Not open conflict, but gradual divergence. What makes this moment so compelling is its restraint. There are no dramatic declarations, no visible ruptures, just a silent adjustment that speaks volumes. Camilla has survived storms before, but this one does not rage openly. It moves beneath the surface, redefining space and signaling that the center of gravity is shifting. Because beneath the surface of polite royal statements lies something far more strategic, an emerging power shift. William is known for restraint, but restraint should never be confused with hesitation. This transfer was executed with precision, no leaks beforehand, no emotional appeals, just action. And in royal politics, action speaks louder than proclamations. Was this about honoring the Queen's wishes, or was it a preemptive consolidation of influence, ensuring the monarchy's emotional core aligns with his vision? For years, William has cultivated a leadership style that appears measured, almost understated. He rarely rushes to comment. He seldom engages in public dramatics, yet beneath that calm exterior lies something far more deliberate. His approach has always been quiet but firm, shaped by observation, by long preparation, by understanding that power inside the monarchy is rarely seized, it is positioned. This transfer reflects that philosophy perfectly. It was not theatrical, it was decisive. In moments of succession planning, timing is everything. Legacy assets, especially those carrying emotional weight, must be stabilized before uncertainty can fracture their meaning. The Queen's private archive was more than sentimental property. It was symbolic capital. By consolidating control over it now, William ensures that its interpretation cannot drift or be diluted. In doing so, he anchors the monarchy's emotional inheritance firmly within the orbit of his future reign. That is not impulsive, it is strategic. There is also the unmistakable alignment between William and Catherine. Their partnership has been presented publicly as steady, collaborative, and forward-facing. Privately, it appears increasingly unified in direction. Entrusting Catherine with the collection strengthens that unity. It frames them as a cohesive front emotionally, symbolically, institutionally. In contrast, shared authority structures with Camilla were notably absent in this decision. That absence signals clarity. It reduces ambiguity. It simplifies hierarchy as the crown edges closer to generational transition. Of course, public optics differ from private calculation. Outwardly, the move can be framed as honoring the Queen's trust, as preserving her legacy through a figure closely associated with her values. Privately, it operates as rehearsal. A rehearsal for how authority will flow when William ascends fully. A rehearsal for who stands at the center of legacy stewardship and who stands respectfully to the side. The symbolism is subtle but unmistakable. Future monarchy direction is being tested in real time. Critics may question whether such consolidation risks alienation. Supporters may view it as necessary clarity. But what cannot be denied is the control embedded in the decision. By acting swiftly and silently, William demonstrates that he is not waiting for consensus to define his era. He is shaping it incrementally, piece by piece, asset by asset. Each step reinforces the notion that the next chapter will not drift organically, it will be structured deliberately. And if this move feels contained, history suggests otherwise. Strategic consolidations rarely occur in isolation. They tend to signal momentum. When one emotional cornerstone is repositioned, others often follow. The monarchy evolves through patterns, not accidents. This transfer could be the first visible indication of a broader recalibration, one that prioritizes streamlined authority and generational alignment over complex shared symbolism. Yet, strategy alone does not satisfy the deeper question. Behind every calculated move lies an emotional current. Decisions of this magnitude are not purely administrative. They resonate within relationships. They reshape bonds. They redefine trust. And while the mechanics of power may explain the structure of this transfer, they do not fully illuminate the feelings intertwined within it. And while strategy explains the how, it doesn't fully answer the emotional why, especially for Catherine. For Catherine, this wasn't just an honor, it was a coronation without a crown. Being entrusted with the Queen's private art archive elevates her beyond ceremonial presence. It frames her as the emotional bridge between eras. But with that trust comes scrutiny. Is she prepared to carry not only the legacy, but the controversy attached to it? For years, Catherine has cultivated an image of calm stability. She speaks carefully, she moves deliberately. She rarely allows emotion to spill into public space. That composure has become her strength. In moments of turbulence, she embodies reassurance. In moments of turbulence, she embodies reassurance. In times of uncertainty, she projects continuity. This new responsibility amplifies that identity. It suggests that the Queen saw in her not just duty, but reflection, a shared understanding of restraint, a shared commitment to preserving dignity under pressure. The public alignment between Catherine's values and the Queen's long-standing persona is impossible to ignore. Both project quiet discipline. Both prioritize steadiness over spectacle. By transferring the private archive into her care, William reinforces that alignment. It feels less like delegation and more like endorsement. An invisible thread connects the late monarch's personal world to Catherine's emerging influence. That thread carries weight. It shapes perception. It strengthens the narrative that the monarchy's emotional core will remain steady in her hands. Yet elevation is rarely uncomplicated. The symbolic passing of feminine royal influence carries its own tension. The Queen's presence defined an era. Her judgment, her tastes, her quiet authority shaped the institution's rhythm. To inherit fragments of that intimate world is to inherit expectation. Catherine is no longer simply admired. She is evaluated. Every decision regarding the archive, every preservation choice, every potential public reveal will be examined for meaning. With guardianship comes interpretation, and interpretation invites scrutiny. There is also the growing perception that Catherine represents the monarchy's future identity, not only as a partner to William, but as a cultural compass. The private art collection becomes a lens through which that identity may be defined. What she protects, what she highlights, what she keeps private, each choice communicates direction. In this sense, her role extends beyond stewardship into subtle authorship of legacy. She does not merely preserve memory, she shapes how it will be remembered. But beneath the poise lies emotional weight. These are not neutral objects. They are deeply personal artifacts tied to a woman who carried the crown for decades. To hold them is to hold fragments of her private reflections. That responsibility demands sensitivity. It demands understanding of nuance, and it demands strength, because with honor comes pressure. The admiration surrounding Catherine's rise contrasts sharply with the strain such elevation imposes. Success and burden travel together, and then there is the inevitable question of division. As K.S. Threne's position solidifies, the contrast with Camilla's exclusion sharpens. Public praise for one inevitably amplifies silence around the other. The monarchy thrives on balance, yet balance appears increasingly delicate. Catherine's ascent does not occur in isolation. It redefines space within the hierarchy. It subtly redraws influence. Whether intended or not, her elevation intensifies the emotional undercurrents already forming beneath the surface. In this moment, Catherine stands at a crossroads between reverence and responsibility. She embodies aspiration and tension simultaneously. She is rising, yet the atmosphere around her grows heavier. Because when legacy is transferred, it does not simply empower, it reshapes relationships. It challenges equilibrium, it tests resilience, and as Catherine rises, the silence from Camilla grows louder and more telling. No dramatic confrontations, no public arguments, just subtle shifts, missed meetings, restrained smiles, carefully chosen seating arrangements. The monarchy has mastered the art of dignified distance. But insiders suggest that behind the composed exterior, this transfer ignited a quiet Cold War, because when legacy is redirected, loyalties are tested. At first glance, nothing appears fractured. Engagements continue, statements remain polished, appearances unfold with the same disciplined choreography the institution has perfected over generations. Yet those who observe closely speak of small but telling adjustments. Conversations that once flowed easily now seem measured. Invitations feel calculated. Proximity is managed. In a family where nuance carries weight, even a pause can speak louder than words. These are not accidents, they are signals. Within the palace, influence rarely moves in straight lines. It operates through networks, trusted advisors, long-standing confidence, strategic allies who shape decisio NS before they ever reach public awareness. Since the transfer of the Queen's private archive, those networks have subtly realigned. Some gravitate more firmly toward William and Catherine, sensing the consolidation of future authority. Others tread carefully, balancing loyalty with caution, aware that visibility during transition periods can carry risk. The atmosphere grows layered, charged not with open hostility but with calculation. Advisors now navigate delicate shifts in hierarchy. Who speaks first in discussions? Whose counsel carries greater weight? Who is informed early and who learns late? These quiet recalibrations reveal more than formal titles ever could. The redistribution of legacy has introduced new centers of gravity. And whenever gravity shifts, tension follows. Stability is preserved outwardly, yet internally, equilibrium must be renegotiated. Media speculation only intensifies the strain. Commentators dissect seating charts and shared appearances as though they are coded messages. Headlines amplify perceived divisions, sometimes stretching thin threads into dramatic narratives. Even if some interpretations exaggerate, the repetition shapes perception. Perception shapes mood, and mood, within an institution built on image, can become self-fulfilling. What begins as subtle distance risks, solidifying into assumed rivalry. Emotionally, the landscape is complex. Pride and disappointment coexist. Catherine's elevation brings admiration and expectation. Camilla's exclusion invites sympathy and quiet scrutiny. William's decisiveness inspires confidence in some, unease in others. Each reaction adds another layer to an already volatile environment. Institutional stability demands composure, but personal feelings do not vanish simply because they remain unspoken. They settle beneath the surface, influencing tone, influencing trust. The monarchy survives by resenting unity. Yet unity under pressure requires discipline. When personal hurt intersects with strategic repositioning, restraint becomes both shield and burden. The success of the institution depends on maintaining cohesion, even as internal dynamics evolve. But evolution is rarely comfortable. It stretches loyalties. It tests resilience. It reveals where influence truly resides. What makes this moment particularly potent is its ambiguity. There is no open conflict to resolve, no public apology to deliver, only distance. only interpretation, only a growing sense that the architecture of influence is quietly being rebuilt. If this is a Cold War, it is fought through symbolism and silence, not confrontation, and history suggests that such silent conflicts often precede visible change. Because when legacy is reassigned, it rarely stops at one decision. Alignments shift, responsibilities follow, and those who feel repositioned must decide how to respond through adaptation, resistance, or strategic patience. The current calm may simply be the stillness before broader realignments take shape. Yet beyond the palace corridors, the public reaction adds another volatile layer to this unfolding drama. When the story surfaced, reactions were immediate and polarized. Some praised William's decisiveness, others saw a calculated sidelining. Social media erupted. Commentators dissected motives, and suddenly, the Queen's private art collection became a national conversation about loyalty, succession, and identity. In a digital age, even silent royal moves echo loudly. What had been executed behind palace walls quickly transformed into a public battleground of interpretation. Supporters framed William as a protector of legacy, a future king securing emotional continuity before uncertainty could take hold. They saw strength in the silence, clarity in the consolidation. To them, this was not exclusion, it was guardianship. A necessary step to ensure that the Queen's most personal archive remained aligned with the values she embodied and the leadership she quietly prepared. Yet parallel narratives surged with equal force. Sympathy gathered around Camilla, not through official statements, but through sentiment. Many questioned whether years of integration and loyalty had been quietly overlooked. For some observers, the exclusion felt abrupt, even cold. In their eyes, the transfer risked reopening old wounds and reinforcing hierarchies that had long seemed softened. Public debate did not center on paintings. It centered on belonging. Catherine's image, meanwhile, expanded rapidly. Admiration intensified. Commentators described her as the stabilizing axis of a monarchy in transition. Her association with the Queen's private archive elevated her from admired consort to symbolic heir of emotional authority. The contrast was striking. While tension narratives swirled around exclusion, Catherine's presence appeared to embody reassurance. Success and strain unfolded simultaneously, intertwined within the same decision. The media, as always, amplified the drama. Headlines framed the transfer as strategic maneuvering, as generational recalibration, as subtle confrontation. Discussions dissected body language from recent appearances, scrutinized past statements for hidden meaning, and projected future implications with dramatic certainty. Even when speculation stretched thin, repetition gave it weight. The monarchy's carefully curated image of unity encountered a new challenge not from open conflict, but from interpretation. For younger audiences, the moment carried a different resonance. Many viewed it not as division, but as generational reset. They interpreted William's decisiveness as evidence that the next era would be more streamlined, more assertive, less encumbered by layered symbolism. To them, this was evolution, a shift toward clarity, a monarchy reshaping itself to reflect new expectations while preserving foundational identity. The contrast between tradition and adaptation became part of the conversation itself. And within that conversation lies something profound. Perception shapes power. The monarchy does not function solely through titles and ceremonies. It survives through narrative. When the public perceives strength, authority deepens. When they sense fracture, uncertainty spreads. The transfer of a private archive may seem contained, but its symbolic impact ripples outward. It influences trust. It influences confidence. It influences how the next chapter will be received before it even begins. What makes this moment so charged is its duality. It can be read as protection or positioning, continuity or correction. Each interpretation strengthens a different version of the monarchy's future. William's consolidation of legacy, Catherine's elevation, Camilla's silence all coexist within a narrative still unfolding. The digital age ensures that every subtle gesture becomes amplified, every absence magnified, and yet, despite the noise, one truth remains constant. Public reaction is only part of the equation. The monarchy adapts internally, long before it announces change externally. What the world sees is often the final layer, not the foundation. Beneath trending debates and polarized commentary, decisions continue to evolve quietly. But perception is only one part of the story, because the real question lingers over what comes next. One transfer, one exclusion, and an entire monarchy recalibrates. The Queen's private art collection now rests under Catherine's guardianship, symbolizing continuity, loyalty, and strategic clarity. But Camilla's absence from that legacy speaks volumes. Was this the quiet establishment of the future monarchy's emotional core, or the first visible crack in its foundation? What appeared at first to be a contained administrative move now feels unmistakably like rehearsal, not for ceremony, but for succession. This transfer reads as a preview of how authority will flow when the crown changes hands fully. It demonstrates who stands at the center of emotional stewardship and who remains peripheral. In monarchies, succession is not only about titles, it is about who controls memory, who shapes legacy, who becomes the interpreter of history. And in this moment, that interpreter is Catherine. The partnership between William and Catherine emerges stronger than ever. Their unity is no longer symbolic, it is structural. Together, they represent continuity wrapped in renewal. By consolidating the Queen's private archive within their sphere, William reinforces the image of a streamlined future monarchy, focused, disciplined, forward-looking. The emotional architecture of the institution now orbits their alliance. It signals clarity, it signals direction. It signals that the next era will not drift. It will be deliberately shaped, yet clarity often leaves shadows. Camilla's long-term positioning grows uncertain, not publicly diminished, not openly challenged, but subtly redefined. Influence in royal life is rarely removed, it is redistributed. The absence from this pivotal legacy moment suggests a narrowing circle of symbolic authority. That narrowing may not erupt into confrontation, but it alters equilibrium. And equilibrium is everything within a family that governs through continuity. The monarchy has always walked a tightrope between tradition and adaptation, preserve history, yet evolve with time. On the hierarchy, yet respond to generational change. This transfer embodies that balancing act. On one hand, it preserves the Queen's private legacy within trusted hands. On the other, it recalibrates internal dynamics to reflect an emerging leadership core. Tradition is maintained, but the center shifts. Adaptation occurs quietly, without formal declaration. Legacy itself becomes both inheritance and instrument. It can unify, but it can also redefine power. The Queen's private collection is no longer simply memory, it is message. A message about who carries emotional authority forward, a message about which partnership defines the monarchy's future, and perhaps a message about which chapter has closed, even if no one says so aloud. The emotional stakes remain high. For Catherine, the honor carries immense expectation. For William, the decision signals control but invites scrutiny. For Camilla, silence speaks louder than any statement could. Pride, ambition, loyalty, restraint all converge within this singular act. Success and suffering exist, side by side, woven tightly into the fabric of a family whose personal lives are inseparable from public consequence. And if this transfer feels final, it may instead be the opening move, because consolidation rarely stops at one gesture. If legacy assets are being quietly reassigned now, what else may follow? Titles, patronages, influence over future narratives. The recalibration has begun, but its full extent remains unseen. That uncertainty lingers, charged and unresolved, because in the House of Windsor, the most powerful revolutions are never announced, they are signed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.